He is an absolute lightning rod for BYU fans. Jake Retzlaff has been put on notice by his coach this week as to what the expectations are for him as BYU's starting quarterback. What is it going to take for Jake to win over A, his teammates, B, his coach, and more importantly, BYU fans? We're digging into it on today's show.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. And thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Ultimate GM. They've got a really cool new game. It's called Ultimate College Football HC. It's a brand new mobile game that's completely free, has no ads, is 100% playable offline. Begin your coaching legacy today with Ultimate College Football HC. All right, let's dive right in on today's show. Some of you may have seen it or heard it earlier this week. BYU head coach Kalani Sitake was asked by yours truly about the turnover woes that Jake Retzlaff endured in the win over SMU. A fumble early on in the game, 2 interceptions, all of them essentially bailed out by otherworldly defense for the BYU football program as they went on to win that game 18-15. It was a positive sign in my mind that Jake battled back from those 3 turnovers and got BYU in a position multiple times late in that game to get into the winning position. Obviously, getting that field goal, late touchdown as well. Those were important things for him. But those turnovers, they're an absolute bugaboo. By my count, I believe many of you out there can also count this. It's 9 turnovers, I believe, in his 5 Power 5 games as BYU starting quarterback. And obviously, that's an unsustainable number. You got to be better about that. Last season, we've talked about it. He had a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio at one point, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and 3 fumbles lost. That is absolutely unsustainable. That is something that is going to make Kalani Sitake and another coach that he happens to play for want to tear their hair out. Obviously, it's got a lot of BYU fans angry about Jake's turnover issues and what it's going to take for him to figure it out, get up past that, and be able to play mistake-free football. Well, let's just put it this way. Kalani Sitake minced literally no words in his response to me. Unless you hear it in its entirety, here you go.
No, there's no one-offs. Take care of the stinking football. That's what it comes down to. So that's I've said it over and over and over again. I don't want guys to have to play tight and feel like they can't take a chance. But that the football belongs to everybody. It belongs to the fans. It belongs to the team. It belongs to the program. It's not just that one player's. It's not his ball. It belongs to all of us. And so they need to start thinking about it more like that. And even this opportunity, like I know that stuff might happen. A guy might fall down and stand up and catch the ball, and we'll respond. The other side of that is want the defense to get some turnovers, get some big plays, and get some opportunities. Like there's different ways to talk about ball security. Create more havoc and get more turnovers on defense, and do the same thing on offense. Flip the field on special teams. Find ways to get advancement, get more points on the board, and offense take care of that football. You know, but do it within the realms of your responsibility. I mean, we can deal with a sack. That's okay. That can happen. That happens sometimes. We've been able to respond after that. It's just sometimes a game happens where turnovers they occur and you can overcome it, but you can't just keep thinking that it's going to be taking care of itself magically. So we're gonna. That's what it's always been our emphasis and. We're going to still keep doing that, but it needs to improve. We know that.
Take care of the stinking ball. I don't think it's much clearer than that. I've told you guys before on this that coaches will speak to their players via the media. Connor Pay pulled back the curtain yesterday and said that, hey, that's pretty mild compared to what we're hearing inside the building. If you missed that episode, go back and listen to it. Connor was absolutely in rare form yesterday. The bigger point to be made here, I believe, is that Jake goes into this game against Wyoming, and it's a G5 opponent. So in theory, the level of competition should go down, and therefore, if you go kind of by the thought process, he's going to have a better performance. The bigger concern that I have is he's got to prove that he can obviously take care of that football. Kalani in his comments said, yes, there's going to be those plays where that defensive lineman, I think it was Hunt Harrison or whatever his last name was, popped up after being down on the field, and that ball lands, literally, it feels like right in his lap. Turnovers like that are going to happen. Those are quote unquote happenstance when it comes to that happening. What he's referring to are the plays like the first interception that Jake threw where he's getting sacked, decides he's got to get that ball out of his hand, chucks it up, it gets deflected, it just flutters up in the air, and it settles in the arms of a defender. You cannot have that. Those are back-breaking plays. Better teams than SMU will absolutely make BYU pay for such gaffes by Jake Retzlaff. What is it going to take for Jake to get past that? I think, number one, he's got to essentially calm down in moments of panic like that. He looks a little bit like a deer in headlights at times when moments like that take place. If I got to get the where's of the ball. You know what? As Aaron Roderick said on Coordinator's Corner earlier this week on BYU TV, eat the sack. Take a loss, live to play another down. Do not try and be the hero out there and make it a worse situation than it already is. That is simply, I think, what Jake Retzlaff has to do. If he can go out and play relatively mistake-free football, once again, issues are going to happen. The fumble he had in that game, remember, Connor Pay owned up to it on yesterday's podcast. It was a snap count issue where they're supposed to do a fly sweep to Cody Epps. Well, Cody Epps was already past Jake when that snap finally came, so Jake had to essentially eat the play and try and scramble, and it was an incredible play by the defensive lineman to punch that ball out. Obviously, you got to be able to play better in terms of ball security and in terms of holding on to that football, but the bigger thing is if Jake can play mistake-free football, BYU is going to find themselves in a very, very good spot. This appears to be an extremely, extremely strong defense that BYU is going to field this season. It is going to hold opponents down and give BYU's offense a major, major opportunity to go out there and show what they're capable of each week. The problem that, once again, that Jake Retzlaff has shown in his time as BYU starting quarterback is a penchant for turning the ball over and especially doing it in big spots. He will forever be linked with that 100-yard pick six against Oklahoma. And I obviously hate bringing it up time and time again, but it gets brought up by literally everybody out there. If he can go out there against Wyoming and show progress, meaning what do I mean progress? Have good showing and have zero turnovers. And once again, if a happenstance type play occurs, sure, you deal with it. But go out there, don't try and be the hero in every single circumstance and just play mistake-free football. And I think BYU will do just fine with Jake as their starting quarterback. The flip side of that, as Kalani alluded to, it feels like in that answer, if Jake does not figure it out, well, guess what? That's when you may see Gary Bohannon. Now, I will also add this caveat. I would like to see Gary Bohannon get an opportunity to play this week against Wyoming, whether it's planned and it's already in the game plan where they give him a series or two, just get a feel for what he does in game, or if BYU can race out to a pretty sizable lead, take Jake out of the game and let Gary get some run. I'd like to see that just so we have a feel for what Gary Bohannon can offer to the BYU football program. We'll see if that ultimately transpires. But if Jake continues to be as loose as he is with the football, it may be taken out of the coach's hands, and they just simply say, we cannot afford, it's an unsustainable model here by Jake Retzlaff, and we got to sit him down. That, if you're rooting for Gary Bohannon to be the guy at BYU, I guess in a way, that's what you're rooting for BYU to have happen to them, but that feels like a pretty loserish type thing to do to root against your starting quarterback. So, fingers crossed that Jake goes out against Wyoming, has a mistake-free game, engenders some confidence back in him, and then carries that forward on into Big 12 play. And if he can avoid the major turnovers, those back-breaking type plays, because many times coaches and players will tell you there are 5 to 6 to maybe 7 plays in any given football game that literally the entire game seems to hinge on. If you can avoid being on the wrong side of the majority of those, more often than not, you're going to win football games. So that's what Jake's got to prove, I think, to win over everybody. I know that his teammates are going to back him. I know that his coaches have said that, hey, he's still our guy. But you also got to understand that trust, it only goes so far, and you cannot burn it, because once you do burn it, once again, the bridge is burned, and you have to move on at that point. All right, coming up here in just a minute, we're going to catch up with a BYU defensive player that some of you may know, some of you may not. He is one of my favorite guys to root for on this team because he's overcome odds that many guys would have given up. And what I mean by that, well, he is a pint-sized version of what most guys playing his position are, but he plays with heart, plays with tenacity, and he's bringing it as the backup defensive tackle right now for BYU. We'll introduce you to Josh Singh coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Ultimate GM. They got an incredible new mobile game called Ultimate College Football HC available now. It's an amazing game that simulates you getting in the shoes of a head football coach and leading your program glory online. Think about it. You can do everything you want and essentially be the head coach of BYU or any other program out there you have interest in. From recruiting players and hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps and handing out scholarships, you control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. We'll be able to handle all the pressure that comes with that. And here's what the best part is. You also are responsible for calling offensive plays in game. Your strategy will not only determine the success of your football season, but also shapes the future and the legacy of your program as well. Ultimate College Football HC is completely playable offline, is completely free as well, has no ads, and you can play on the go as you want and when you want. And of course, we have a special offer for you of our Locked On Cougars listeners. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, that's all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost or bonus, free boost for your program. Make sure to take advantage of that perk as it'll get your team off to a strong start in the game. To download the game, visit ultimate-cfb.com. That's ultimate-cfb.com or search it out on your app store of choice. That's Ultimate College Football HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Now, Game Time is here for you guys, no matter what type of event you're into. Whether it's sporting events, comedy, theater, music, they've got the tickets for you guys. They have an incredible new feature in their app. It's called Game Time Picks. Makes getting your tickets for your favorite live events even easier. It is filtering out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you do not have to waste time sifting through thousands of tickets to find the right options for you guys. So once again, no matter what you're into, they've got options for you. They also feature the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference that you paid for your seats. You also can see your seat views inside the app and also toggle all-in prices. You're not being surprised by a bunch of fees that pop up at the end. Take advantage today and take the guess we're going to buy your tickets with our friends over at Game Time. Download the app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege and get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Lowest price, best tickets. And of course, what time is it? It is game time. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you've not done so already, check out our friends over at the Locked On College Football Podcast. Spencer McLaughlin's doing a great job making sure you're up to speed on everything in the national conversation when it comes to college football. Get it wherever you get your podcasts. It's also available on YouTube. It's Locked On College Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, BYU's defensive line has obviously had a resurgence this year. They're almost halfway to their goal, not their goal, but halfway to their total sack number from a year ago. They've got 5 sacks through 2 games this year. They had 11 in the entirety of the 2023 football season. QB hits, tackles for loss, just the overall tenor and play of the BYU defense has gone up, and it obviously starts up front with the BYU defensive line. John Nelson, Blake Mangelson, Tyler Batty, Isaiah Banya, Logan Latui. There are a bevy of names that you will think of when it comes to that BYU defensive line. But I wanted to introduce you to a guy that I have had a great time watching out there, because relative to a bunch of guys literally in his own position room, he doesn't fit. And you'll hear him talk about it. He acknowledges that very fact. But Josh Singh is an incredible human being, has got a really cool story to tell, and obviously is living his dream playing for the BYU football program. And I had a chance to catch up with him at practice yesterday to talk about all that. How does a guy like you, who's a walk-on, end up as a second-string defensive tackle for the BYU football program?
Honestly, it's been a journey being here. You know, it's a blessing being here even as a walk-on. Mm-hmm. But it just comes down to consistency. I think that's what Coach Pull-Up talks to us every day about, is being consistently doing your job at the highest level. And if you keep doing that, doesn't matter who you are, how big you are. I feel like if you do your job, you can do your job.
Now, I had a friend who was watching the game last Friday, and I said, "Who was number 99?" I'm like, "Well, his name is Josh Singh." Like, well, who is? I give him kind of the background on you. So can you just essentially tell people who you are, where you're from, etc.?
I'm from Laie, Hawaii originally. Lived there most of my life. I moved to Orem High School, went in my junior year. Finished ball there right after COVID, or right during the season of COVID. Mm-hmm. So I got lucky because Hawaii was pretty bad with COVID. Ended up here in 2021, walked on, and it's been here since. So just working my way up to playing ball now.
How does it feel to be contributing to this defense right now?
You know, it's been I love this defense. Mm-hmm. This defense, we run bunch of 4-2, a bunch of 3-down, but everything you can think of we'll probably run, and it's been nice, especially having Coach Hill, Coach Pujols, Coach A here now. Like it's been good.
Well, I wanted to ask you about, because you got Coach A, you got Chad K,
K,
they're all working with you guys along this defensive line. How much would you credit those guys and their work with you guys in terms of your improvement this year? I think that's you guys may be the most single improved unit on this team.
Yeah, I mean, they all bring in a different background. They all been to the biggest of places. They've all seen the best talent. They've all produced the best talent. So kind of just taking every bit you can from each one of them. And I think that's going to pay off in the long run, and which is what our group has done so far. Which is we've been pretty dominant. So we just got to keep being dominant, and we'll be good.
How did you feel about the overall performance against SMU?
It was great. Could be better. There's always room for improvement, little things. But just got to keep it going.
Did you guys know, I guess, before earlier this week, that you guys were the only team outside of Georgia to have held a Power 4 opponent without a touchdown in a game?
I did not know that. I just found that out now. That's pretty cool. But, again, you got to shut them out to 0. That's the goal. That's always the goal. And then just keep making plays.
Now, the defense, in many respects, on Friday was bailing the offense out, obviously get out of some scrapes there. How gratifying was that? You guys know you guys could go on the field and shut a team like that down.
We knew SMU was a powerhouse. They're a great offense, so it just came down to doing our job. Every 11 man on the field, just doing your job.
Now, you guys have generated quite a bit of pressure this year, a lot of QB hits, sacks. I think you're almost halfway to the sack total you had a season ago.
Exactly.
What's been the key to that?
Just doing our job. I think last year we still learning the defense. This year everyone's doing their job, and when everyone does their part, it's just like poetry. It just flows.
How big is it to have guys like Jack Kelly, Isaiah Glasker, or even Harrison at a linebacker spot helping in that regard?
Man, they've been great. I mean, they've been filling gaps, hitting holes, getting sacks. So they bring the pressure. I trust all my guys around me, and our group. We just got to keep doing our job, and we'll see we'll see what happens.
Now against SMU, we saw you guys kind of go that 3-3 stack defense. Is that kind of a one-off, or is that something you guys are going to be able to utilize going forward?
I feel like that's a question for Coach Hill, but we honestly can go from 4-2 to 3-3. We can play whatever. Just put our hand in the dirt and make a play. That's the goal.
All right, now you guys go head up to Wyoming this week. I know you're a kid from Hawaii. Do you know much about the history between the Cougars and the Pokes?
A little bit. I know there's some rivalry there, but just another team right now that we're excited to play. They have a great offense, so we're just excited to play them.
Their reputation is a power run team. How exciting is that for you as a defensive tackle?
I mean, it's just another game. Honestly, you just gotta do your job. Everyone will. Yeah, just do your job.
What do you see from them offensively, like scouting report wise? What do you see in particular?
Right now, I know they're a lot heavier in the run, like you said. But I think at the end of the day, it's just down to doing your job. Like Coach Bull tells us every day, just do your job. Do your job, knock it back, hold the double. Defense will make the plays.
Now, I don't mean this to sound facetious or anything like that, but you are an undersized defensive tackle.
Yep.
What is your chief skill that makes you succeed at this level?
I got that a lot, getting recruited. I think you guys know how it goes.
I'm fully aware.
Being 6 foot, 285, you don't really get all the looks like a lot of the bigger guys do, right? So I think it just comes down to playing your cards. Something Coach Poole has always taught me is just play your cards. So my skill set comes down to my twitch and my technique. That's the two things I always focus on. So just using those two and then trying to make the most of it.
You have natural leverage as well, I would imagine.
Yep. There's a reason why guys like Kalani Sitake, Aaron Donald, Byron Murphy, we're all similar in size, but they make plays because they use their leverage and technique. So it's learning from those guys is amazing as well.
Well, I'm gonna ask you, do you take inspiration from guys like that?
Yeah, I actually chopped up Kalani Sitake a couple times last year. Okay. He plays for the Bucks right now, but just seeing those guys and then understanding what they do, and then it helps to improve my game. Just watching them too.
That is Josh Singh, and a big thank you to him for taking the time to join us here on the podcast. You can tell he's a guy he's living the dream. He's a walk-on who's really just been hanging around the program, working his way up methodically on the scout team for a large stretch of his career to this point. I remember watching him at Orem High School, and I just watched him absolutely maul opposing offensive lines, and he lists himself at 6 foot 285 right now. If he played at Orem at 260, I would be floored. He was just an absolutely incredible athlete for his size relative to a bunch of guys that, like I said, he was mauling at the point of attack in high school. It's translated over. I thought he played extremely well against SMU. You may have seen him out there, number 99, and said, who is that guy out there? Well, that's Josh Singh. And a big thank you to him for taking the time. He grew up in Laie, Hawaii, came to Orem High School, and once again, he's living the dream playing for the BYU Cougars. And there's stories like that. They're easy for guys to root for, I feel like, because Josh has a really cool story to tell. He obviously is happy to be where he's at with the BYU football program. And so long as he continues to produce, there's no reason to think that he will not continue to run, at least with the twos, for BYU on that defensive line. I can tell you there were multiple points during training camp. We saw him working with the ones on the defensive line. He plays with grit. He plays with tenacity. His strength is, I think, very good relative to his size. And you hear him talk about guys like Aaron Donald and the guys he looks up to in the NFL. Those are great role models because a lot of them are shorter guys and maybe not the biggest guys out there, but they're freakish athletes. And that's what Josh is. He's got an incredible first step. That was one of his chief strengths in high school, and it's translated over to this level. And if he continues to do what he's doing, he's going to obviously leave guys in his wake that are bigger and probably more highly thought of athletes. I use the comparison with Josh in my mind of Tanner Wall. Remember, Tanner Wall was a former walk-on wide receiver, moved over to safety, and is now the starting free safety for the BYU football program. We heard all summer long that, hey, maybe Tommy Prastis, Raider DeMooney, or one of these other guys was going to win the job, who's a highly thought of prospect and recruit for the BYU football program. But there's this walk-on Tanner Wall starting there. Josh hasn't earned a starting job yet on the defensive line, but he's firmly in the rotation, and he's exceeded all expectations I would have had for him coming into this program. And you can tell that he is very happy to be where he's at, but he's also not satisfied because, as he says, the whole goal of this defense is, quote, do your job. And that's a really good, I think, motto to go by for this BYU defense. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk some BYU basketball. It's a really important day today for one particular BYU basketball player. If he enrolls today, everything's good with the BYU basketball roster. If he doesn't, well, that could change a few things. And we also found out that there's going to be another high-level athlete visiting BYU on an official visit. When is all that going down? We'll dig into that momentarily right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, FanDuel is here for you guys to help you have fun, obviously, when it comes to the sports betting world. They are America's #1 sportsbook, obviously. But they have an incredible offer that's not available for very much longer, and that's what it is. It's now through September 22nd. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 on FanDuel and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account, a current form of payment, and, of course, you can cancel it any time. I can attest to what YouTube TV is all about, my friends. It's an incredible thing. And if you are missing your team's games, and a lot of you probably are because we live in Utah for the most of you out there, you're trying to watch your team, well, this is your opportunity to get a free 3-week trial from our friends at FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com and take advantage of that offer today with our friends at FanDuel. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. Appreciate all of you for being with us. If you have not done so already, sign up for our Locked On Cougars Insider Group. I say it literally every day on this podcast. What are you waiting for? Join us today. Get inside intel you will not find anywhere else when it comes to BYU sports, and it comes to your phone in the form of a text message. It's not much more direct and intimate than that. You can have one-on-one conversations with myself via text. And once again, you get a 14-day free trial by clicking the link in the show notes below. And it's just $5 a month beyond that to be a part of the Insiders Group. It's a great thing we've got going on. We've got a really strong group as it is, and I hope that many more will be joining us in the very near future. All right, before we go on today's show, let's talk a little bit about BYU basketball. Now, I have been asked this question multiple times. Jake, BYU basketball, the roster looks like it's fairly intact. A lot of guys showing up on campus with school underway. Where is Khadim Mboup? Well, great question. I did not know the answer to that. And asking around about it, the hope was and the expectation was that he would enroll at BYU in time to be part of the team this semester. Robbie McCombs from Anchors the Foe wrote about this, and as he wrote, and I also understand, today is essentially the drop dead day for Khadim to enroll for BYU for this upcoming season because it is the ad drop deadline for BYU in this upcoming fall semester. If Khadim does not enroll by today, well, he's not going to be on scholarship, at least for the early going of his BYU career. And who knows what would happen at that point. He took up that final scholarship we all thought when he committed to BYU, but that could now be reassigned. And that's the interesting part about this, is how much of a shuffle would that cause with this BYU roster? I frankly don't have a good answer on that front, but I think the bigger point to be made here is that Kevin Young has built a extremely strong roster on paper. Khadim Mboup, and I will echo what Robbie McCombs is saying here, was kind of thought of as a guy that's more of a developmental prospect. He would have come to BYU, probably spent this year as a redshirt candidate, and worked his way up the depth chart in terms of offering what he can offer. He's a pretty talented player. You watch his highlight reels from his I guess you call them high school or prep days out there on the internet, and you can see the length and the athleticism. It's all there, and there's a big reason why BYU, among other schools, wanted this kid to join their basketball program. The question now is, can he get enrolled by today? So if you're monitoring that today, speaking of September 11th, and by the way, my thoughts and prayers go out to all those who've been affected. We're now 23 years past that fateful day of September 11th. That's just an aside, an incredible memorial, obviously, to think back on the horrific terrorist attacks of that day. But it's also it's an important day for BYU basketball, because if, like I said, if Mboup doesn't get enrolled by today, then things get a little bit interesting as to what BYU will ultimately do. So I don't have a firm answer on, how they will adjust things, but it can be simply as easy as reassigning a scholarship to somebody else, or maybe hold it in reserve for Mboup. Maybe he enrolls at the winter semester. I don't know on that front, but if you're tracking in terms of all the guys to show up for BYU basketball, so far as I know, Mboup is the only guy that is not enrolled for BYU, and obviously will bear watching to see if he ultimately does get himself enrolled and if he can start participating with BYU basketball in short order as well. Because a lot of these guys have been around the program for months now, and they've already started workouts there at the Marriott Center Annex. They posted the video. Now, I'll also come clean on this. Yegor Demin has officially clarified how you pronounce his name. He said, no more denim jeans. Okay, so I was wrong. I'll eat crow on it, but here's the deal. Yegor Demin posted a thing on Instagram the other day, shows him getting blocked by Keba Keita. Said, I've never been blocked like this in my life. Keba Keita is going to be an absolute force for BYU basketball this basketball season. I'm very excited to see what he can offer to BYU, and feels more and more like he's going to probably be the starting five for BYU. And it's crazy to consider, but he is showing a lot of things, it sounds like, in practice. And when projected top 10 NBA draft talent out there is saying that I've never been blocked like that in my life, and he's played against some pretty high level athletes with Real Madrid, it's pretty high praise for a guy like Keba Keita. The other thing is, you probably saw it, the Field of 68, if I'm not mistaken, had their grade for the offseason for BYU, giving him an A+. Well, would you expect anything less? What Kevin Young's done is revolutionized BYU basketball. So really cool to see that as well. Now, the final note on the BYU basketball front is that Robbie McCombs also reporting this, the Chamberlain Burgess, Orem High School prospect, formerly of Lone Peak. He is going to make an official visit to BYU coming up in October 11th and 12th. Oh, excuse me. He's going to visit Illinois on October 11th and 12th. And then later in the month, October 25th and 26th, he'll be in Provo for his official visit with the BYU basketball program. Now, he's a 4-star prospect on ESPN, a high 3-star prospect by On3, 24/7 Sports. You kind of figure he's probably right in that same realm, high 3-star, low 4-star. But he's a 6'9" forward/wing type that BYU would do well to bring in. The nice part is dad Josh and mom Ashley both played for BYU, so this is a BYU legacy. His uncle Chris is on the staff right now for BYU basketball, so it feels like this should be a done deal to get Burgess on the court for BYU. Now, he does plan on going on a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That would delay his enrollment, obviously, until 2027. But this is cool to see this coming out. Obviously, a lot of us have watched BYU offer guys from literally all over the country and even internationally. But at the same time, Kevin Young and his staff are not forgetting their home front. They're bringing guys in from the local angle as well. Dean Ruckert's out there in the 2026 recruiting cycle, and Ruckert is absolutely an elite talent. We're talking top 30 in the country type talent. He plays at Timpview High School, which is literally a stone's throw away from BYU. So handle your business on the home front, bring in the talents locally that you can obviously work with on this roster. But once again, the wings have been spread literally globally for the BYU basketball program, and I think all of us can be grateful for that, because Kevin Young continues to do, as I like to say, a marvelous work and a wonder. All right, that's going to do it for today's edition of the podcast. A big thank you, as always, to all of you for making it your first listen of the day. Obviously, a big thank you to all of you who are everydayers as well. And until tomorrow, this has been the Locked On Cougars podcast.